There are moments in history when everything changes forever. When the sky splits open and the world you know becomes nothing but memory and ash. For humanity, that moment came on a Tuesday afternoon when the Krell Armada emerged from the darkness between stars. Captain Darius Blackwood watched his homeworld die from the observation deck of the transport ship Wanderer's Promise. Earth burned below him, not with the familiar orange of terrestrial fire, but with the sickly green flame of alien plasma weapons. Continents cracked like eggshells. Oceans boiled into steam. The blue marble that had cradled humanity for millennia was being systematically erased from existence. All evacuation pods have cleared the atmosphere, Lieutenant Rebecca Park reported from her station, her voice tight with suppressed grief. We're the last ship in the sector. Darius nodded, unable to tear his eyes from the viewport. Behind him, 10,000 souls slept in cryogenic suspension, unaware that they would never see Earth again. They were the lucky ones. 17 billion people had died in the past 90 days. The Krell had been thorough in their extermination. The aliens had arrived without diplomacy, without warning, without even a declaration of intent. Their ships had simply appeared in orbit, massive crystalline structures that bent light around them like living prisms. Then the bombardment began. Military installations first, then cities, then everything else. The Krell wanted humanity gone, and they possessed the technology to make it happen. Incoming transmission, Park announced. Krell flagship. Put it through. The screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that defied easy description. The Krell commander stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body composed of interlocking crystalline plates that shifted colors with each movement. 6 limbs extended from its torso, each ending in razor-sharp appendages. Its face, if it could be called that, held a cluster of multifaceted eyes that glowed with cold intelligence. When it spoke, its words came through the translation matrix as clicks and harmonics that the computer rendered into flat, emotionless sentences. Human vessel, your species has violated the ancient protocols. Your expansion into forbidden space has warranted complete elimination. Surrender your ship, and we shall grant you the mercy of instantaneous death. Darius stepped forward, his hands clenched behind his back. I am Captain Darius Blackwood of the Earth Transit Authority. You have murdered my world. You have slaughtered billions of innocent people. We will remember this. We will remember you. The Krell commander tilted its crystalline head. Remember? You speak of memory as though you possess a future. Your species ends today. We have purged 47 civilizations from this galaxy. Yours is merely the latest. You are primitives playing with technology you barely comprehend. Your resistance is meaningless. Perhaps, Darius replied, his voice steady despite the rage burning in his chest. But even primitives can learn. Even the weak can become strong. You've made one critical mistake today. The alien's eyes pulsed with what might have been curiosity. And what mistake is that, human? You left some of us alive. Darius cut the transmission and turned to his bridge crew. Execute Protocol Exodus. Signal all ships. Scatter pattern Delta 9. Around Earth's dying corpse, 347 human vessels began their final maneuver. Each ship carried between 5,000 and 50,000 survivors. Each had been loaded with genetic banks, cultural archives, and technological blueprints. Each would travel to a different, distant corner of the galaxy. Jump drives charging, Park reported. 30 seconds to simultaneous departure. The Krell ships moved to intercept, their crystalline hulls catching the light of Sol like malevolent stars. But they were too slow. Human jump technology might have been primitive by galactic standards, but it was reliable and it was fast. Jump in 10 seconds. Park counted down. 9, 8, 7. Darius looked one last time at Earth. Clouds of debris already surrounded the fragmenting planet. In another hour, there would be nothing left but an asteroid field and the ghost of humanity's origin. 3, 2, 1. Jump. Space folded. Reality twisted. The Wanderer's promise and its sister ships vanished into the quantum foam, scattering across the galaxy like seeds on an ancient wind. On the bridge of the Krell flagship, the commander watched the last human ships disappear from its sensors. Its second officer, a smaller crystalline being with bronze-colored plates, approached. "Should we pursue, Commander Vexer?" The commander considered for a moment, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the burning remnants of Earth. "No, they are broken and scattered. Their technology is inferior. They pose no threat to the Krell Dominion. Let them run to the dark corners of space. Let them survive in whatever barren worlds they find. In a few generations, they will either die out or become so diminished that they will serve as a warning to other species about the price of defiance. And if they do not die out?" Commander Vexer made a sound that the translation matrix would have rendered as laughter. "Then we will hunt them down in due time. The Krell have ruled this galaxy for 90,000 years. We have eliminated threats far greater than one broken species of bipedal mammals. They are nothing. They will remain nothing." The Krell fleet departed, leaving Earth to its final death throes. The planet broke apart over the course of 6 hours, its fragments spreading into a ring around the sun. Humanity's birthplace became humanity's grave, but in the depths of space, traveling faster than light toward destinations unknown. 347 ships carried the last remnants of Earth's children. In their cargo holds were weapons, knowledge, and something else. Something the Krell had not accounted for. They carried memory. They carried rage. They carried the absolute certainty that someday, somehow, they would return. Lieutenant Helena Cross brought her scout ship Phantom, wing out of jump space near an unnamed star system 60,000 light-years from Earth's grave. The journey had taken 3 months of subjective time, but nearly 5 centuries of real time, thanks to the peculiarities of human jump drives. When she and her crew had left Earth's funeral pyre, they had been young soldiers. Now, according to the calendar, they were historical artifacts. "System scan complete," announced her navigator, Officer Thomas Chun, no relation to the long-dead admiral who had overseen humanity's initial evacuation. 3 terrestrial planets in the habitable zone. The second one shows oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, liquid water, and no signs of advanced civilization. Helena studied the data streaming across her console. Perfect. Almost too perfect. Any Krell presence in the sector? Negative. Nearest Krell outpost is 12 light-years away, well outside their standard patrol routes. Thomas paused, reviewing more data. "Captain, I'm picking up something else. Human life signs on the planet's surface." Helena's head snapped up. "Confirm that." "Confirmed. Approximately 2 million individuals concentrated in 3 major population centers. Energy signatures consistent with human fusion reactors and industrial complexes." Thomas looked up from his station, his face showing the same shock Helena felt. "Someone beat us here." As the Phantom Wing entered orbit, the mystery deepened. Below them lay cities that blended human architecture with designs Helena had never seen before. Towers stretched toward the sky, connected by transit tubes and energy bridges. Agricultural zones spread across temperate regions in perfect geometric patterns. Defense installations dotted the landscape, their weapon arrays pointed toward the stars. "We're being hailed," the communications officer reported. "They're using old Earth protocols. Put them through." The face that appeared on the screen belonged to a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that held the weight of centuries. She wore a uniform that seemed part military, part exploration corps, decorated with insignia Helena didn't recognize. Scout Vessel Phantom Wing, welcome to New Terra. I am Governor Rachel Domingo. We've been expecting you. Helena blinked. Expecting us? How is that possible? Governor Domingo smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because we've been watching for ships like yours for 400 years. Captain Cross, please, land at the coordinates we're transmitting. We have much to discuss. An hour later, Helena stood in a conference room, overlooking a thriving human city. Governor Domingo sat across from her, along with several other officials whose titles spoke of a fully functioning government: Minister of Defense, Director of Colonial Development, Chief of Scientific Research. How long have you been here? Helena asked. Our colony ship, the Horizon's Edge, arrived here 423 years ago, Domingo explained. We were one of the first to flee Earth. Captain Maria Reeves had surveyed this system years before and remembered it when the evacuation began. When we arrived, this planet was pristine and empty. We named it New Terra and began building. Helena looked around the table. You've done more than just build. You have a civilization here, industry, defense. How many of you are there? On New Terra, approximately 2.3 million. But New Terra isn't alone. Domingo activated a holographic star map. Dozens of systems lit up in blue. These are confirmed human colonies. Each one was established by survivors from Earth. We estimate the total human population across all colonies is somewhere between 30 and 40 million. 30 million. Helena breathed. From 2.5 million survivors. We've been busy, said the Minister of Defense, a grizzled man named Victor Stone. We've also been preparing. The Krell think they destroyed us, but they only scattered us. For 4 centuries, we've been quietly building, researching, and planning. Thomas leaned forward. Planning for what? Stone's expression hardened. Revenge, justice, liberation. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night, but the goal is the same. We're going to make the Krell pay for what they did to Earth. Helena felt something stir in her chest. That old rage, carefully buried during the long, lonely years of travel, suddenly blazed back to life. How? The Krell have technology centuries ahead of ours. They've ruled the galaxy for 90,000 years. They destroyed Earth in 90 days. They destroyed Earth with the technology we had then, said the Director of Scientific Research, a young woman named Dr. Priya Castellanos. But we're not the same species we were 400 years ago. When you flee for your life, when you scatter across the galaxy with nothing but determination and raw materials, you learn quickly. You adapt. You innovate. Domingo gestured, and the holographic display changed, showing schematics of ships, weapons, and devices Helena couldn't begin to understand. We've made breakthroughs in quantum physics, energy manipulation, and biological enhancement. We've studied Krell technology from derelict ships and abandoned outposts. We've learned their weaknesses. And we've developed weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. You're talking about starting a war, Helena said. No, Stone replied. We're talking about finishing one. The Krell started this war when they burned Earth. We're just going to end it. Helena stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Children played in parks. People walked streets lined with shops and cafes. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear music drifting on the wind. This was what humanity had built from ashes and exile. This was what they had become in the dark between stars. When? She asked quietly. Soon, Domingo answered. We've been coordinating with the other colonies for decades, waiting until we had the strength and the weapons to strike back. You and the other scout ships arriving now are the final piece. You'll serve as our communications network, linking all the scattered human worlds into one unified force. Helena turned back to face them. The Krell have hundreds of worlds, thousands of ships. Even with all our colonies united, we're still vastly outnumbered. Numbers aren't everything, Dr. Castellanos said. The Krell are arrogant. They believe themselves invincible. They've grown complacent after 90,000 years of dominance. They don't innovate because they don't think they need to. That arrogance will be their downfall. Governor Domingo stood and walked to Helena's side. 400 years ago, the Krell thought they had exterminated humanity. They were wrong. They created something far more dangerous than they could imagine. They created an enemy with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. They created ghosts with long memories and sharp teeth. Helena looked at the holographic star map, at all those blue lights representing human colonies spread across the galaxy. 40 million people, all descended from the survivors of Earth's destruction, all carrying the memory of what had been done to their ancestral home. When you struck at us, Helena said softly, you should have made certain we were all dead, because those who survive learn to become predators. Stone nodded approvingly. The Krell spent 90 days destroying Earth. We've spent 400 years preparing our response. Now it's time to teach them that humanity doesn't forgive, and we never, ever forget. The meeting continued into the night as Helena learned about the vast network of human colonies, their technologies, their plans, and their determination to right an ancient wrong. By the time she returned to her ship, the Phantom Wing had a new mission. They would no longer be scouts searching for safe harbors. They would be heralds announcing humanity's return in the darkness of space. The galaxy remained ignorant of what was coming. The Krell continued their dominion, unaware that the species they had tried to eliminate had transformed from frightened refugees into something far more dangerous. Humanity was coming home, and they were bringing fire. Captain Natasha Volkov stood on the bridge of the warship, Redeemer's Fury, and felt the weight of 4 centuries pressing down on her shoulders. Around her, the largest human fleet ever assembled hung in the darkness, like a constellation of vengeance. 5,000 ships, each one built from the ground up with a single purpose, to make the Krell understand the price of genocide. She was young by the standards of her people, only 35 years old, but she carried the memories of her ancestors like sacred text. Her great-grandmother had been on one of the evacuation ships that fled Earth's destruction. The stories had been passed down through generations. The burning planet, the green flames, the Krell's cold dismissal of human life. Natasha had grown up with those stories, and they had shaped every choice she had ever made. All ships reporting ready, announced her first officer, Commander James Wright. The other battle groups are in position at the designated coordinates. Natasha pulled up the tactical display. The Krell homeworld of Kristara hung before them, a massive planet of crystalline structures and artificial rings. It was beautiful in a cold, geometric way. It was also the heart of the Empire that had murdered Earth. Open a channel to all ships, Natasha ordered. All frequencies. The communications officer nodded. Channel open, Captain. Natasha took a breath. Across 5,000 ships, over 2 million human soldiers, technicians, and officers listened. Beyond them, 40 million colonists on hundreds of human worlds watched and waited. This moment had been 400 years in the making. This is Captain Natasha Volkov of the Redeemer's Fury to all human forces. 4 centuries ago, our ancestors fled from a burning world. They watched as the Krell destroyed everything we had built, everyone we loved, and the planet that gave us birth. The Krell believed they had won. They believed they had erased us from the galaxy. They were wrong. She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. Young and old, from a dozen different colony worlds, all united by a common purpose. Our ancestors fled into the darkness, but they did not flee in despair. They carried with them hope, determination, and a promise. A promise that someday we would return. That someday we would stand before those who wronged us and show them that humanity cannot be so easily destroyed. Today we fulfill that promise. Today we show the Krell and every other species in this galaxy that humanity remembers, that humanity endures, and that humanity does not forgive those who commit genocide. In the cargo bays of every ship, soldiers checked their weapons one final time. In the engineering sections, technicians made last-minute adjustments to systems that represented 400 years of innovation. In the medical bays, doctors and nurses prepared for what was to come. Everyone knew their role. Everyone understood what this day meant. We do not fight for conquest, Natasha continued. We do not fight for territory or resources. We fight for justice. We fight for the memory of 17 billion souls who died screaming as their world burned beneath them. We fight so that no other species will ever suffer what we suffered. And we fight to prove that even the mighty can fall when they underestimate the power of the survivors. The tactical display showed the other human battle groups dropping out of jump, space around Krell military installations across the Empire. It was a coordinated assault on a scale never before attempted by humanity. Months of planning, years of preparation, centuries of determination, all coming together in this single moment. The Krell believe they are invincible because they have ruled for 90,000 years. But empires built on the bones of the innocent are hollow things. They look strong until someone strikes at their heart. Today, we strike that heart. Today, we show them that their victims did not disappear. We evolved. We adapted. We became something they never expected. Natasha walked to the viewport and looked at Kristara. Somewhere on that world, the Krell commander who had ordered Earth's destruction might still be alive. Krell could live for thousands of years. If he was still breathing, he would learn today what it meant to create enemies instead of graves. Remember Earth, Natasha said quietly. Remember the blue skies and green fields. Remember the oceans and mountains. Remember every person who died. Remember their names if you know them, and if you don't, remember that they existed. They laughed and loved and dreamed. And then the Krell took all of that away in 90 days of fire and death. We cannot bring them back. We cannot undo what was done. But we can ensure that their deaths meant something. We can ensure that the species responsible for their murder learns that actions have consequences. She turned back to face her crew. Some of you will not survive this day. Some of our ships will not return to their colonies. War is brutal, and the cost is always higher than we hope. But know this, whether we live or die, we have already won. We have already proven that humanity cannot be destroyed. We are the children of Earth, scattered across the stars, and we have come home to set things right. Commander Wright stepped forward. Captain, the fleet is awaiting your orders. Natasha looked at the tactical display one more time. 5,000 human ships against the military might of an empire that had stood for 90 millennia. It should have been suicide. It would have been suicide if humanity had remained what they were 400 years ago. But they had changed. They had learned. They had become something new. Signal all ships, she ordered. Execute Operation Reckoning. For Earth, for the fallen, for the future. The human fleet surged forward like a tidal wave of controlled fury. The new weapons humanity had developed crackled to life, tearing through Krell shields with terrifying efficiency. Ships that had been designed by survivors who studied every weakness, every flaw, every vulnerability in Krell. Technology proved their worth in the first seconds of battle. The Krell defense forces scrambled to respond, but they were facing an enemy they didn't understand. The primitive humans who had fled 4 centuries ago were gone. In their place was a species forged in exile, tempered by loss, and driven by a purpose that transcended simple survival. On her bridge, Natasha watched the battle unfold with fierce pride. This was more than revenge. This was a message to the galaxy, a declaration that humanity had returned and would never again be victim to genocide. Every ship that fought today carried not just weapons, but the hopes of 40 million colonists and the memories of 17 billion dead. Incoming transmission from the Krell. Surface, the communications officer reported. They're requesting negotiations. Natasha smiled coldly. Tell them we're happy to negotiate. Right after they experience 90 days of what they gave Earth. Tell them we're just getting started. Tell them that humanity has returned, and we remember everything. The battle raged on, and across the galaxy, on every human colony world, people watched and wept. They wept for what had been lost, for what could never be restored. But they also wept with pride, because their species had done the impossible. They had survived extinction. They had built new worlds from nothing. And now they had returned to prove that even in the darkest moments, even when everything seems lost, hope can endure. Humanity had been broken, but not destroyed. Scattered, but not defeated. And now, after 400 years of patient preparation, they had become something the Krell never imagined possible. They had become the reckoning that all tyrants eventually face. The story of Earth's children was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The battle for Kristara lasted 7 days and 6 nights, though the concepts of day and night meant little in the void of space. Captain Natasha Volkov had not slept during that entire time, surviving on stimulants and the fierce determination that had carried humanity across 4 centuries of exile. Now, as the last Krell defensive station fell silent, she stood before the Supreme Council of the Krell Dominion in what had once been their impregnable throne world. The crystalline beings sat in a semicircle, their once radiant bodies now dimmed and cracked from the assault. At the center sat Commander Vexer, the same Krell leader who had dismissed humanity as insignificant insects 400 years ago. The throne room itself was a marvel of alien architecture, all geometric perfection and refracted light. But the beauty was marred now by scorch marks and structural damage. Human soldiers stood at every entrance, their weapons trained on the defeated rulers of a 90,000-year-old empire. You should have killed us all, Natasha said, her voice echoing through the vast chamber. When you destroyed Earth, you should have hunted down every last ship. You should have pursued us to the ends of the galaxy and made certain that not a single human child survived. But you didn't. You were arrogant. You believed we were beneath your notice. Commander Vexer's multifaceted eyes, once bright with contempt, now flickered with something that might have been fear, or perhaps merely the comprehension of a terrible mistake. We have ruled this galaxy since before your species learned to make fire. We have eliminated threats far greater than yours. How did primitives defeat the Krell Dominion? Because we're not primitives anymore, Natasha replied. She walked slowly around the council chamber, her boots clicking on the crystal floor. You know what happens when you take everything from someone? When you destroy their world and murder their families? You create people who have nothing left to lose. And people with nothing to lose are the most dangerous force in the universe. She stopped and pulled up a holographic display showing the battle statistics. You had superior numbers. Your technology was proven over millennia. By every logical calculation, you should have won. But you forgot something crucial. You forgot that necessity drives innovation faster than comfort ever could. You forgot that species who must adapt or die tend to choose adaptation. Governor Rachel Domingo entered the chamber, followed by representatives from 30 different human colony worlds. Each one carried the bearing of someone who had been forged in hardship and emerged stronger for it. They stood beside Natasha, a unified front that represented humanity's scattered children finally coming home. 400 years ago, my ancestor stood on a ship and watched Earth burn, Domingo said, addressing the Krell Council. She watched her ships turn our homeworld into molten slag. She watched 17 billion people die. And in that moment, she made a choice. She chose to survive. She chose to remember. And she chose to ensure that someday, somehow, your people would answer for what you had done. Dr. Priya Castellanos stepped forward, carrying a data tablet. We studied you. For 4 centuries, we analyzed every piece of Krell technology we could find. We dissected your abandoned ships. We examined your energy signatures. We learned how your shields worked, how your weapons functioned, how your entire civilization operated. And then we designed weapons specifically to counter every single advantage you possessed. She activated the tablet, showing schematics that made the Krell Council members shift uncomfortably. Your shields operate on a crystalline resonance frequency. Beautiful, efficient, nearly impenetrable. But every crystal has a resonance frequency that can shatter it. We found yours. Your ships are powered by quantum singularity cores. Incredibly powerful, nearly impossible to overload. But we found a way. Your communication network relies on faster-than-light tachyon pulses. Instantaneous, uninterceptable, perfect for coordinating an empire. We learned to jam it. Victor Stone, the Minister of Defense, added his voice to the chorus. You had centuries of experience. We had necessity. You had established doctrine. We had innovation. You had confidence. We had rage. Guess which proved more valuable in the end? Commander Vexer finally spoke, his translated voice lacking its former certainty. What now? Will you do to us what we did to you? Will you burn Kristara as we burned Earth? Will you prove yourselves to be the same monsters you claim to despise? The question hung in the air like a blade. Every human in the room felt the weight of it. They had come so far, sacrificed so much, all for this moment of reckoning. The temptation to simply say yes, to unleash the same devastation upon the Krell that had been unleashed upon humanity, was almost overwhelming. Natasha looked at her fellow humans, seeing the struggle on their faces. She understood. She felt the same fury, the same desire for absolute retribution. But she also understood something else, something that her great-grandmother had written in her journals during those first desperate years in exile. No, Natasha said finally, we won't destroy Kristara. We won't murder your civilians. We won't commit genocide against your species. Do you know why? Vexer's eyes pulsed with confusion. Why? Because that would make us you, Natasha replied. And we did not spend 400 years surviving and building just to become the thing we hated most. We are better than that. We have to be better than that, or Earth died for nothing. She gestured to the holographic display, changing it to show the current state of Krell space. Human forces had secured major military installations, but civilian areas remained untouched. Here are our terms. The Krell Dominion is dissolved effective immediately. Your empire is over. Your military will be disarmed and monitored. Your government will be restructured under the oversight of a coalition that includes human representatives and representatives from the other species you've subjugated over the millennia. Governor Domingo continued. You will provide reparations to humanity for Earth's destruction, not in wealth or territory, but in knowledge and labor. Your scientists will help us with a project we've been planning for decades. We're going to rebuild Earth. The Krell Council erupted in chittering protests. Impossible. Your planet was destroyed. The very bedrock was vaporized. Nothing is impossible for a species that survived what you did to us, Dr. Castellanos said with quiet pride. We have the genetic banks. We have the biological samples. We have the geological data. We even have soil samples from before the destruction. With Krell technology and human determination, we will reconstruct Earth. It will take generations, perhaps centuries, but we will bring our homeworld back from the dead.
Natasha felt emotion welling up in her chest. This was the true victory, she realized. Not defeating the Krell in battle, but choosing to build rather than destroy. Choosing hope over hatred. Choosing to honor the dead by creating life rather than spreading more death. You took our world from us, she said, her voice thick with feeling. You tried to take our future. But you couldn't take our humanity. You couldn't take our ability to dream, to hope, to build something better than what came before. That's the difference between us. That's why we won. Not because we had better weapons, but because we had something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. Commander Vexer slumped in his seat, the weight of millennia of arrogance finally breaking under the reality of defeat. Why show us mercy? After everything we did? Because mercy is not weakness, Governor Domingo answered. Mercy is the hardest choice of all. It would be easy to destroy you. It would feel good, at least for a moment. But then we would be consumed by the same darkness that consumed you. We would become tyrants justifying our actions by pointing to past wrongs. The cycle would continue. Victor Stone nodded. Besides, we want you to live. We want you to remember. We want every Krell for the next 90,000 years to look at humanity and remember what happens when you underestimate the power of survivors. We want you to teach your children about the species you tried to exterminate, and how those scattered refugees became the force that ended your empire. That's a better revenge than any amount of destruction. Natasha walked to the viewport and looked out at Kristara's cityscape. The planet would survive. Its people would live. But they would live in a galaxy that had fundamentally changed. The age of Krell dominion was over. A new era was beginning, one where humanity and the other species the Krell had oppressed would work together to build something better. My great-grandmother watched Earth die from the bridge of an evacuation ship, Natasha said softly. She wrote in her journal that night about what she hoped humanity would become. She wrote that she hoped we wouldn't let rage consume us. That we would remember we were once the victims, and never become the victimizers. That we would use our suffering to develop empathy, not cruelty. She turned back to face the Krell Council. I read those journals growing up. I memorized every word. And I made a promise to myself that if I ever stood where I'm standing now, I would honor her wishes. So yes, we could destroy you. But we won't. Instead, we'll do something much harder. We'll forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because we deserve to be free of the hatred that has driven us for 4 centuries. Commander Wright appeared at the doorway. Captain, the other colonial fleets are reporting in. All major Krell military installations have been secured. Resistance has ceased across the Empire. It's over. Over. The word seemed to hang in the air, carrying the weight of 400 years of struggle, sacrifice, and determination. Natasha felt tears streaming down her face, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. Around her, other humans were crying too. Tears of relief, of grief, of joy, of release. Signal all human forces, Natasha ordered. Stand down to peacekeeping posture. Begin coordination with local populations for the transition. And someone get me a channel to every human colony world. All of them. Minutes later, Natasha's face was being broadcast to 40 million humans scattered across hundreds of worlds. She saw her image reflected back at her on screens in the throne room, and she chose her words carefully. These people deserve the truth, all of it. People of humanity, she began. Today we achieved what our ancestors thought impossible. We defeated the Krell Dominion. We avenged Earth. But more importantly, we proved that we are still human. We had the power to destroy our enemies completely, and we chose mercy instead. We chose to build rather than burn. We chose to honor our dead by creating a better future, not by spreading more death. She paused, gathering her thoughts. In the coming years, we will work to rebuild Earth. It will be a massive undertaking requiring resources from every colony and cooperation from species across the galaxy. It may take 100 years or more. Some of us will not live to see it completed. But our children will walk on Earth's soil again. They will swim in Earth's oceans. They will look up at Earth's sky. And they will know that no matter how dark things become, no matter how desperate the situation seems, humanity endures. Governor Domingo stepped beside her. We scattered as refugees. We return as builders. We left Earth as one species fleeing death. We return to this galaxy as many peoples united by common purpose. The colonies we built were more than just survival. Natasha felt emotion welling up in her chest. This was the true victory, she realized. Not defeating the Krell in battle, but choosing to build rather than destroy. Choosing hope over hatred. Choosing to honor the dead by creating life rather than spreading more death. You took our world from us, she said, her voice thick with feeling. You tried to take our future. But you couldn't take our humanity. You couldn't take our ability to dream, to hope, to build something better than what came before. That's the difference between us. That's why we won. Not because we had better weapons, but because we had something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. Commander Vexer slumped in his seat, the weight of millennia of arrogance finally breaking under the reality of defeat. Why show us mercy? After everything we did? Because mercy is not weakness, Governor Domingo answered. Mercy is the hardest choice of all. It would be easy to destroy you. It would feel good, at least for a moment. But then we would be consumed by the same darkness that consumed you. We would become tyrants justifying our actions by pointing to past wrongs. The cycle would continue. Victor Stone nodded. Besides, we want you to live. We want you to remember. We want every Krell for the next 90,000 years to look at humanity and remember what happens when you underestimate the power of survivors. We want you to teach your children about the species you tried to exterminate, and how those scattered refugees became the force that ended your empire. That's a better revenge than any amount of destruction. Natasha walked to the viewport and looked out at Kristara's cityscape. The planet would survive. Its people would live. But they would live in a galaxy that had fundamentally changed. The age of Krell dominion was over. A new era was beginning, one where humanity and the other species the Krell had oppressed would work together to build something better. My great-grandmother watched Earth die from the bridge of an evacuation ship, Natasha said softly. She wrote in her journal that night about what she hoped humanity would become. She wrote that she hoped we wouldn't let rage consume us. That we would remember we were once the victims, and never become the victimizers. That we would use our suffering to develop empathy, not cruelty. She turned back to face the Krell Council. I read those journals growing up. I memorized every word. And I made a promise to myself that if I ever stood where I'm standing now, I would honor her wishes. So yes, we could destroy you. But we won't. Instead, we'll do something much harder. We'll forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because we deserve to be free of the hatred that has driven us for 4 centuries. Commander Wright appeared at the doorway. Captain, the other colonial fleets are reporting in. All major Krell military installations have been secured. Resistance has ceased across the Empire. It's over. Over. The word seemed to hang in the air, carrying the weight of 400 years of struggle, sacrifice, and determination. Natasha felt tears streaming down her face, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. Around her, other humans were crying too. Tears of relief, of grief, of joy, of release. Signal all human forces, Natasha ordered. Stand down to peacekeeping posture. Begin coordination with local populations for the transition. And someone get me a channel to every human colony world. All of them. Minutes later, Natasha's face was being broadcast to 40 million humans scattered across hundreds of worlds. She saw her image reflected back at her on screens in the throne room, and she chose her words carefully. These people deserve the truth, all of it. People of humanity, she began. Today we achieved what our ancestors thought impossible. We defeated the Krell Dominion. We avenged Earth. But more importantly, we proved that we are still human. We had the power to destroy our enemies completely, and we chose mercy instead. We chose to build rather than burn. We chose to honor our dead by creating a better future, not by spreading more death. She paused, gathering her thoughts. In the coming years, we will work to rebuild Earth. It will be a massive undertaking requiring resources from every colony and cooperation from species across the galaxy. It may take 100 years or more. Some of us will not live to see it completed. But our children will walk on Earth's soil again. They will swim in Earth's oceans. They will look up at Earth's sky. And they will know that no matter how dark things become, no matter how desperate the situation seems, humanity endures. Governor Domingo stepped beside her. We scattered as refugees. We return as builders. We left Earth as one species fleeing death. We return to this galaxy as many peoples united by common purpose. The colonies we built were more than just survival.